Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org.
For WXXI, this is Connections, filling in for Evan Dawson. I'm Gino Finelli. Today's connection was made in 2023 when Taylor Swift set out on her Eras tour. It was the pop star's sixth headlining tour and would become the highest-grossing musical tour of all time. It was the first tour ever to clear $2 billion in revenue, and in fact, it was also the first tour to clear $1 billion in revenue. And tickets weren't cheap. While initial sales prices were in the several $100s range, ticket sellers on markets like StubHub inflated those prices into the thousands. But a New York State bill, introduced by Queens State Senator James Skoufis, aims to change that. The bill would place some limitations on online ticket reseller marketplaces. So to discuss the bill and the role outlets like StubHub play in the live music marketplace, I'm joined by Daniel Armbruster, lead singer and songwriter for Joywave.
Thank you. Hello.
Zach Makita, owner and operator of Anthology.
How's it going?
Jimmy Vielkind, New York State issues reporter for our partner station WNYC.
How's it going?
Doing good. And to start here, I want to allow Jimmy to kind of explain the context of the bill and what it will do and what its purpose is. So you written about this recently. I just kind of want you to lay out what we're looking at right now.
Well, that's right. So New York lifted most restrictions on ticket reselling or ticket scalping, to use the term that was in vogue when I was a kid, in 2007. So it used to be that there were very, very, very severe restrictions on how much you could resell, where you could resell a ticket, to whom could you resell a ticket. And it was demonstrated by actually former Attorney General and former Governor Eliot Spitzer that this was inefficient, that it was leading to problems because what you had was a black market of people selling these tickets. And sometimes they were legitimate, sometimes they were counterfeit, sometimes people got burned. It really wasn't in a way that benefited the consumer. Under the new law, all those restrictions mostly went away, and we saw with the rise of technology, these secondary marketplace platforms. So people think about StubHub or Vivid Seats. That means that if a venue is going to price a show at whatever the artist or the venue or the promoter, a combination of them set, if there is excess demand, i.e. if people are willing to pay more for the ticket, like was the case with the Taylor Swift Eras tour or Bruce Springsteen's recent stand on Broadway, then there are people who pay more. And the secondary markets, the StubHubs of the world, essentially reap some kind of a service fee as they facilitate those transactions. Sound like an economist, facilitate those transactions. So into this space injects this legislation, sponsored by James Skoufis, a state senator from the lower Hudson Valley, and Ron Kim, an assembly member from Queens. The bill would do a bunch of things, but there are three major components. First, it would ban the sale of speculative tickets. That is, someone that is selling a ticket for an event that they don't yet possess. If you were to go online right now, you could find hundreds of tickets for the World Cup next year, even though the actual tickets have not yet been released. This bill would seek to end that practice of speculative ticket sales, which the sponsors of the bill say creates a bubble that artificially inflates prices. The second main point in the legislation would be to put a cap on the fees that a marketplace or a secondary marketplace charge. So right now, if I were to buy a ticket to a show, and often I would have to deal with Ticketmaster, they are the largest ticketing platform that's used by lots of different venues, they would charge a service fee to cover the costs of promotion, to cover the costs of the ticketing system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The current law says that those fees shall not be unreasonable. But the law doesn't define what unreasonable is. So theoretically, the New York State Attorney General can bring lawsuits, but they haven't done that in the last several years. One of the components of this current piece of legislation will be to define reasonable as about 25%. The third big piece, and arguably the biggest piece of this proposal, would let an artist or a performer say that they don't want tickets to their show or concert to be available on the secondary market for profit. Essentially, it would let them opt tickets to their show off of StubHub. You could still sell tickets to a show for either the face value or slightly less, but there wouldn't be this bidding process that, again, we saw with popular acts like Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen, or I'm sure there are some in Rochester that I'm just not cool enough to know about. And I will turn it over to you folks to discuss kind of how you're living this.
Jimmy, you're thinking of Joywave concerts. That's what you were looking for.
And let me
Gotcha.
ask you.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, Daniel. Like, would you opt out of it if you have the option to not have your tickets go on sale on StubHub?
No, and there's a couple good things this bill is doing, and a couple things that I think are probably a little bit goofy. First of all, as far as opting out, look, I understand that people want to go to concerts. They're fun. They should be fun, right? But this is kind of fundamentally looking at ticket reseller sites and getting mad that secondary markets exist. Secondary markets exist in our society. Like, people were in line to buy Nintendo Switch 2s yesterday, and probably a bunch of them are being sold on eBay right now. So why you're going to regulate concerts and not, I don't know, sports or eBay, or they're all through our society, that seems a little strange to me. As far as people and artists opting out, I think fans are going to get hurt. I mean, we see a large amount of messages from fans who are trying to buy tickets on Reddit or Facebook or outside of the secondary markets, and sometimes they get scammed and they're saying, hey, is there anything you can do to help me? And it's like, no, there isn't. You know, the artist doesn't have your money. That's not how it works. If you're on StubHub or something like that, you know, you can report that as fraudulent and theoretically get your money back.
So it's kind of like the double-edged sword here, I think, a little bit, where, you know, one, if you're putting up a ticket for sale from the artist and say it's $50 and it sells out, ends up in the secondary marketplace for $150. Mm-hmm. Well, the consumer still has the opportunity to see the show if they pay that amount of money. But on the other hand, there's plenty of room for people that are speculative and do want to buy up as many tickets as they can to, you know, reap a little profit off of the top from I mean, concerts are actually scarce, right? Like, there's not a good substitute. Like, if you wanted to go to the Taylor Swift show and it's sold out, I don't know that the Joywave show is a good substitute, right? To turn this, because it's such a subjective thing. Imagine I'm going to will this into existence. I want Buffalo Bills Super Bowl tickets. And Zach over here says, good news, buddy. I got us Cleveland Guardians baseball tickets. That's not a good substitute. I wanted to go to the Super Bowl, right? So the real way to fix this is the way that people don't like at all, which is to price things correctly in the primary market, to eliminate the secondary market. And the only ways to do that are things like Ticketmaster introduced dynamic pricing, which people hated. I mean, theoretically, if you're going to price things correctly in the primary market, you need to turn every ticket sale into an auction, because that ticket will sell for whatever it's actually worth. And that's a terrible thing for the consumers, right? But that's the only way to, like, the concert is worth what people are willing to pay for it, right? And only so many people can go see Taylor Swift or see Joywave or whatever it is. So, Zach,
and the thing to add about that, if I may, Gino,
go ahead.
Is that who wins, right? Theoretically, if you're the artist, the promoter, the venue, doing that auction ticketing, capturing the full value of demand in the market, that money theoretically flows to the artist. But if you're an artist, do you want to be the person associated with making your fans pay 3 times what they otherwise might have paid?
No,
if you let the tickets flow on the secondary market, someone else captures that excess demand. They're
100%.
benefiting off that scarcity. And one of the arguments of artists who support this is that if the money goes to the artists, they'll reinvest it in the act, they'll reinvest it in the show, they'll give Josh Allen another masseuse and another, 3 cases of super juice so that he can finally get to that Super Bowl.
Jimmy,
even though I want to be clear, this doesn't apply to sports.
Jimmy, I saw that in your article. I saw Randy Nichols said something about that, and I thought that was a little bit silly, because look, you could do something with the secondary markets where you say, okay, 50% of the profit from the sale on the secondary market goes back to the artist or the venue or the promoter or the main pot of the event, right? Not to the scalper. And they're splitting the profits or something like that, which, that theoretically, sends the money back to what society probably deems like the good places for it to go, to music or to the arts. But when you set up a tour and you decide what the production looks like and you decide how big the stage is for the Taylor Swift concert, you're basing that based on how much the tickets are, how many seats there are to sell. If one seat randomly sells for $800 instead of $100, you aren't reinvesting that money. You can't. It's way too late to do. So you are increasing the pot, like you would be theoretically increasing revenue for artists or for venues or promoters or whatever, but it's way too late in the game to say, wow, we can have 10 more backup dancers because of this, like, the money's going where it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm. So, Zach, I mean, you're in the position of starting up a venue in 2025, or at least reopening a venue. And your anthology is kind of in that middle market space. It's a lot of mid-range bands, not Taylor Swift level, but not yet. But
See you on the way down, Taylor.
but not like small local bands either. You're right. You're kind of in the middle there. And even there, like I was looking just before we're going on the show of shows that are coming up and whether there are tickets already being sold on StubHub. And I found first show that I would actually was interested in when I saw on the website was Devil Makes 3 is coming in September. Tickets, including fees, are about $40. On StubHub, they're $98. And you rolled your eyes at that. And I when you're running a venue like that and you see that those prices are happening in the secondary market, do you think it deters people from coming out to shows, or does it harm the venue at all itself?
Yes, I think it harms the venue. I don't think it's going to stop anybody from coming to our venue to see our show, but we end up with the target on the back of our heads. I'm thinking back to when we had Royal Otis at Essex, right? Because recently we had Essex that we closed to reopen Anthology. The face value of those tickets were $25 to see Royal Otis. And as we got closer to the show and it was sold out, there was tickets going for over $200 on StubHub. Nor the artist or the venue saw any of that extra money. But now there's an association with that price to see that show. And they're basically, I think in the eyes of the consumer, somebody thinks that we're getting rich off the thing. When in actuality, it's a scalper and a second tier market. So yeah, I definitely think that hurts the venue or even possibly the artist when there's an association that somebody out there, consumer, is buying a ticket and they're like, is that really necessary?
I think there is one thing that this bill does that I'm very interested in. I know Zach is interested in this too. We were talking about it in the lobby, but it caps ticket fees at 25%. That is still way too high. And I think people don't understand what ticket fees are in general. If I can explain that for 1 second.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So these ticketing companies do deals with venues and with promoters where they will pay in advance, let's say it's like $1 million a year or something, to the venue or to the promoter to be the exclusive ticketing provider for that place. In turn, they get to charge whatever they want for fees, and that fee goes towards recouping the $1 million theoretical 0% interest loan that they got from Ticketmaster or whoever else. And then once they've recouped the loan that they took, they get to keep that money. That money never goes to the artist. It rarely goes to the venue unless the venue is also the promoter. That needs to be capped at like 10% or less. It is completely arbitrary. It's made up. It affects people in the secondary market, but also the primary market. It's fake. And people need to, everyone is so used to seeing like service fees on their phone bill or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, those fees, you can't do anything about them. This one you can. It needs to be legislated out of existence immediately. When we did shows at Essex, there wasn't an in-house ticketing company. So we used a company called Humanitix, and they took $1 or $2, and the fee actually went to like nonprofit causes throughout the world, which was amazing. And it was great to see that can be done. All you have to do is eliminate the backroom handshake between the promoters and the ticketing companies.
So I think that's a really great point. And just to add a few things here, the question is, if you have it saying that a fee can't be unreasonable, that's squishy, right?
Yeah.
And theoretically, you're only going to define that if someone brings a lawsuit and if that lawsuit is successful or if it's not successful. The minute you say reasonable shall be defined as 25%, basically anybody who doesn't then set their fee at 24.99% is a sucker.
Yep.
Mhm.
Right? It will obviously immediately kind of push up the market. And that's something I asked the bill sponsors about. And they said that the average is about 35% on the secondary market and about 30% on the primary market. So they said there would still be a savings. The other thing that comes into this is, and I know this just because I took my family of four to go to the circus when it was in Albany a few months back. And I looked online, I'm looking for all these tickets, and I could also see that this show wasn't going to sell out. There's plenty of seats around the arena where we were going to go. I was about to hit the checkout button when I clicked on the all-in pricing to see what the fees were. They were about 20%. And I said, you know what, to heck with this, let's go to the box office. We will pay a much smaller fee at the box office,
Yes.
get the tickets that way. And then theoretically, that's going to go into the pocket of the venue and not the third party operator, which in this case, as in most cases, was Ticketmaster.
Yeah, people are just used to it this way. Like there's so many other ways that you can do this, and people might not like them. I mean, the auction thing that I said is like, of course, absurd, and I'm not suggesting that anyone actually do it, but it makes the primary market and secondary market fall in line. What you were saying about the circus, like if you you could do a thing where there are no tickets, right? It's you show up, you pay $20 at the door, $30 at the door, $40 at the door. It's a flat rate thing. It's general admission. Now there's no ticketing fees, and it's fair theoretically based on different socioeconomic brackets. The people who show up first are the ones who want to get in the most, right? So you're paying with time instead of money. You can do things that way too. That's how bars work on the weekend, right? Or like a local concert would work more like that. There are things, just people are really used to this like Ticketmaster system that we're in. And look, I appreciate that 25% fees is a savings over 30, but still it's made up. Like it needs to go away.
It's that scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that we kind of just live in a society right now that we're so numb to fees and everything. Actually, our next hour is on taxes on tips, and we're going to be talking about tipping too. But this is a kind of
You want me to stick around?
Yeah, I'll stay.
we were actually struggling to get guests, but we're a booked house now for it. So, but it's one of those things where like we are in this position that. One, it is a commodity that people want, and it's a commodity that has a finite amount that you can sell. There's only so many tickets you can sell to an event given the size of the venue. So there's always going to be that middleman in between that is going to be brokering how much a ticket costs, what fees are put on it. But yet we've gone to this point where they become so exorbitant and people are just kind of resigned to it. They've just accepted it. So I kind of want to build on that a little bit of like what a better system does look like. You're talking about kind of a first come, first serve operation.
Yeah.
Would that be something, Zach, that you would be open to? That at the door, whoever gets there first, they get in and they can see the show?
Yeah, I think so long as people are able to come and enjoy something that they're looking forward to doing, the two biggest days that ticket sales move, or like what tickets will move for a concert, the day you announce it and the day that the show happens. In between, there's really it's a trickle effect. But that first day we on sale any tickets, they're the percentage is astronomically larger than any other day. The following weeks. First come, first serve. Sure. I don't know if that works as you start to, I don't know if it's scalable. Right, as you get into these larger,
You don't want to do that at an arena. Everyone's giving $20.
It's crazy, right? Could you imagine? So I think that there's limitations to that idea. I'm indifferent to the idea of whether or not Anthology, would be a place to try that. I'm happy to see if people show up and people are paying a fair price to see the artist that they want to see. I don't care how they got there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I have hundreds of solutions. How much time do we have?
We got 35 more minutes left.
Okay,
so
great. I'll
you
take
can lay
it.
them out.
So one of the things I like in this bill is it bans speculative ticket reselling. So like if I buy a ticket for an event on Ticketmaster now, frequently it's the actual ticket is not released to me until 24 hours before. So I think that's good. Like you have basically a ticket reservation. If you can't sell that ticket, and Jimmy, can you verify for me, is that what this bill is doing? Like if I don't get my ticket theoretically delivered, even though I bought it 3 months ahead, the ticket doesn't show up in my Ticketmaster account until 24 hours before the event. That's the point when I'm able to sell it under this bill?
My understanding is that that's still being negotiated as to the brass tacks language. They weren't really concerned necessarily about people in that situation who have a reservation for a ticket, even if they don't have the physical QR code, or we say the physical ticket,
Yeah.
it's still digital. But
Right.
if you don't have the QR code or the PDF or the whatever, it's more along the lines of people selling tickets with the idea that they will get them later. And this really looks not necessarily at StubHub, but at these concierge services, where I'm sure I could go right now and try to buy tickets for the Super Bowl next year, even though those tickets haven't been created. They don't exist.
Right.
You could get tickets to the Olympics, again, when these tickets don't exist. It's really looking at that, because if you already start to set demand for this product before the product is even released, and you're saying, oh, wow, well, Jimmy's Most Excellent Ticketing Company will get me to the Super Bowl for $10,000. That's a signal that has the potential to inflate the prices even before they're set. So I don't believe it would apply in the fact pattern that you just mentioned, Dan, but I have to be honest, I made some calls this morning to people who are following the final negotiations about this legislation. It doesn't sound like it's going to pass as it was proposed last week, but we will not really know for sure until kind of the middle of next week, when the state legislature sets to wrap up its work for the year here in Albany.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I know that they already like there's a lot of issues with botnets and stuff buying like a massive chunk of tickets. I think Ticketmaster and sites like that are doing a lot better recognizing patterns now and refunding stuff when that happens.
And the state did take some action on that in 2022. Hochul signed a bill that tried to limit the bots and some of the hidden fees.
Great.
Yeah, so there has been some movement made on that.
So I wonder if you can even, take that further and say you need an ID to buy tickets, right? If this is limited to 4 tickets or something, you already need an ID to purchase, a plane ticket or things like that. I'm not suggesting like the TSA for concerts, but something like that could
Prove you're a human.
Yeah, exactly. Only a human would have a driver's license. I think that limiting the resale prices on secondary sites. So in Ireland, they actually cap resale tickets at face value, so you can't sell them for a profit there. I don't know if you can actually do that in the U.S. I would imagine you would probably face a bunch of lawsuits for trying to, that's a price control, right? But you could do something like I was saying earlier of having like a percentage of it, 50% or something, kick back to the artist, to the venue, to the promoter, to the people actually putting it on. That might not make a difference to consumers as far as like prices, but maybe people would feel better knowing that the money is going to the people doing the event instead of a third party that's basically using concerts as a speculative asset.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to think about with that, Dan, is, will you ever stop the black market? If the demand is there, won't the goods somehow flow regardless of what the law is?
Yes.
For most of my life, marijuana was not legal to purchase in New York. And yet from age 14 on, I and anyone in my high school would have no problem purchasing marijuana for what we felt was a reasonable price, because that's the way the capitalist market works,
Right.
regardless of what the law is. And so you even said this earlier, you get into a place where people are looking to maybe not regulated marketplaces like StubHub or Vivid Seats, but they're looking to Reddit, they're looking to Facebook, or to recall the old vision, some guy in a trench coat kind of 2 blocks away from the concert who's whispering tickets, 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 while people are walking toward the show.
Right.
buying
Buying
it-
tickets.
That begs a question too. That obviously you can't outlaw something out of existence. Scalping itself, they did try to do that, and in 2007, they decided that was not the way to go. But how you do tamp down on it and keep prices under control is finding a way to decentivize it. What does that look like? How do you encourage consumers and the people that are actually selling the tickets and the artists to be able to sell live music performances in a way that discourages a secondhand marketplace? What does that look like, if that's even possible?
I mean, I think that realistically, it's already happening. I don't know how you, going back to what you're talking about, I don't know how you police these secondary markets.
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can. But realistically, the incentive to buy from, we were talking about Humantix earlier, right? Or buy a ticket to go see a Joey Wave show at face value is going to be so much cheaper than going to these second tier markets, right? Like buying a ticket from us as the venue is going to be $30 to go see Joywave versus on a second tier market where it might be $150, $200, whatever. The incentive is just buy tickets early, I guess, and buy it from us.
Yeah, I mean, we as a band deal with this with vinyl and stuff, right? Like we did this really cool run of liquid vinyl 2 years ago that was super limited. They cost so much money to make. We were only able to have the person who made them manufacture us like 150 in like a month. Like this person was working every day to make this happen. And of course, we ended up with some people on there who were treating it as a speculative asset, right? They got in, they bought it in the first, like they all sold out in like 1 minute. And of course, you end up with a few of them on eBay. That's just how our system works. That's PS5s on eBay, right? But I think if you include something in the terms of service, like on Ticketmaster, where it's like, if you resell this ticket, 50% of the resale, because it's all trackable, like, StubHub has the information from Ticketmaster, 50% of the realized profits when you sell this are going to go back to the main event. Like that would discourage people from, I think, buying tickets as a speculative asset. Like if you're only going to get half of what you make, I don't know it's probably still worth it for like the Eras tour, but I don't know if it's worth it for the Joywave tour or the Royal Otis tour or whatever at that point.
So if you could just like lay out a little bit, because I think there is a little bit of absence of knowledge to the general public of like how a musician makes their money, whether it's through touring, whether it's through merch, or whether through streaming.
All of it.
Yeah. Where does live music fit into it as far as like a income driver?
Extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
But probably like merchandise and things like that are probably higher than like you have to like do the tour, right, to sell all that stuff, but generally you look at the tour, you say, okay, we're going to make X amount of dollars, and that's how you base your production. And what does the lighting rig look like, right? Are we going to have a big inflatable cat on stage or not, right?
Man, I hope so.
The answer is yes, but you have to like do the math to look at what you can spend on production, right? So typically something like people buying tickets or whatever gets reinvested into the production. I think that's what Randy Nichols was trying to say in his article. But, if you're including resale value and it's happening late in the game or something, again, you can't like base your tour production around that. But yeah, basically you're scaling your tour based on tickets and ticket sales. And then you are probably making money on merchandise.
And for you, Zach, logistically, when you're trying to get bands to come here, what's the offer proposition of like how many people can you get into the door to get a band to come there? What does that process look like for actually booking shows at a place like Anthology, which is mid-sized venue in Rochester?
Sure. Yeah, it's a logistical nightmare a lot of times. Trying to figure out. We're talking to bands that will be playing in Anthology in spring of next year. It's like and trying to like do the dance and figure out. What the offer looks like. You're never really talking directly to the band, right? You're talking to somebody that represents the band as the booking agent up until you get closer, and then you start talking to the tour manager and you start advancing them and so on and so forth. But the question was, how do I like what is the process, or what does it look like to?
Yeah, what is the Rochester, I think, has that problem of being a city of our size where we're located, where,
Sure.
One, bands skip us over a lot. But, if a band is going to come here, they have to have some kind of idea that they're going to be able to sell enough tickets to make it worth it.
Totally.
So how is that kind of negotiated, of that understanding?
So typically it's rarely with touring bands are you going to be able to do a door deal, strike some sort of like 80-20, right?
90-10.
90-10, right? Something
95-5.
Typically speaking, we need to make some amount of money to keep the lights on, right? And we can do a lot of that over the bar, but I think everyone kind of has their hand out, right? When the show's about to go on, and there's a minimum guarantee typically, right? The band is going to get paid. So as opposed to a door deal, Joywave will come by and they'll say, I want X amount of dollars, or their booking agent that represents them. And I'm not sure how much the booking agent takes. There's so many tiers, and I'm not sure where kind of where it ends before it reaches Daniel over here, right? I don't know personally, but I know that there's a lot of people that are getting involved before they ever step foot in the door,
Yes.
right? And it trickles down to eventually maybe they get some fraction of that money that was initially proposed as a minimum guarantee for them to play inside of our space. Anyway, if a band is coming through, they're going to want to see, regardless of how many tickets are sold, a certain amount of money. And then you got to get into worlds where, like, we were about to have Modest Yahoo back at Essex, and we had to cancel the show because ticket sales were really, really low because he decided that it was going to be a solo acoustic show versus having his whole band, and the guarantee that he asked for didn't reflect a solo show, so we had to pay him a kill fee essentially to end that show at way more money than you would want to. But sometimes you have to do that too. Sometimes you have to spend thousands of dollars just to say, actually, we're good, But yeah, there's a minimum guarantee that, to answer your question, the artist will come when there's a minimum guarantee that is negotiated and contractually bound, and regardless of how many tickets are sold.
And the reason I ask these questions and for you guys to explain it is to emphasize the point that this is very complicated. There's a lot of middlemen in between.
Sure.
And these reselling sites are just one example of the middlemen that exist in the music industry for live music. So kind of demonstrating that point of where we're at and that system that exists. I think that there's a lot of ways to talk about it. What benefits the venue the most? What benefits the artist the most? And I think those are very critical parts of this. But then I think for the general public, the biggest one is what benefits the consumer the most. What system would make it so the average person who doesn't have, who is Taylor Swift's biggest audience base? Probably teenage girls, young 20s maybe. I don't know if that's changed now.
My daughters.
Yeah.
I'm trusting you.
I what do I know? And can they or their parents afford thousands of dollars for a ticket to see the Eras tour?
Some of them can.
Some of them
right?
can.
That's the problem. So it one way, it depends where you are on the societal ladder, right? If you have a bunch of money, the best system is the one we have now, where you just go to StubHub and you go, oh yeah, these tickets are $5,000 each, but my kid wants them, so that's fine. Right. And then the system that I described of showing up at the door with $20 with no tickets, and the person who gets there first in line is the person who wants it the most. That's the most egalitarian.
Mm-hmm. And then you'd have people
I'm
camped
curious
out.
What you think of? I was going to say, what do you make, Dan and Zach, of kind of verified fan programs? Dan, you talked about that limited run of Liquid Vinyl. How did, if at all, you decide who the 150 people who were able to pay that price would be? Do you, with the increasing sophistication of social media, you can tell who the people are who are, consuming all your content, who are engaging with you in these very different ways. And if you can kind of identify these people through some digital avatar, then you can consider targeting them and giving them first dibs on the tickets. Because, Gino, as you were talking, it really struck me that talking to the lawmakers, and one thing that was interesting is that I said there was big millennial energy over this entire issue. All the lawmakers are between about 35 and 45, which is not the average age of a state lawmaker in Albany, who are engaged on this issue. And basically, they're just frustrated and angry and pissed that they can't get tickets to shows on primary sales at really any time. So because of one lawmaker even said that she lost her email that she gave to Ticketmaster 20 years ago and is now somehow blocked from pre-sales forever. So curious what you think about the verified fan programs or some kind of idea where you could figure out who gets the first dibs based on the people that you as an artist, you as a venue want to cultivate as your most loyal or devoted or interested customers.
Yeah, so we have that. So when Joywave puts a tour on sale, we'll send an email out to our email list, and it will include a pre-sale access code. So what you do is for the first week or whatever, actually I guess it's before the official public on sale date for tickets, it's password protected. If you're on the email list, you got an email with that code, you enter the code, then you are able to buy tickets. Of course, if I'm a Taylor Swift Eras Tour level scammer, I can probably just be on that email list, right, and then have the code. But for us, I mean, that works really, really well to make sure that our fans are first in line and getting tickets at face value. And venues typically do the same thing where say that tickets go on sale Friday. Okay, the artist presale is on Tuesday. There's like a Spotify presale thing that sometimes happens where you're able to target the top 10% of listeners, right? The people who listen to you the most on streaming services, and they will get the invitation then to purchase things. And that's something that I don't know if there's a way to fake that, right? Like you would have to have your botnet streaming, right? That's like showing people that, or showing the service that you really love the band. You're in the top 10% of listeners. So then you have the opportunity to purchase tickets next. Then usually there's a venue presale that's on Thursday, right? And that goes out to the venue's list, and you can get it because you've been to shows at Anthology before. And then Friday's the public on sale. That has worked really well for us, and I think it works well for most artists. It might not work for an Eras tour, but for a lot of other things it does.
We are going to take our first break of the hour, and when we come back, we'll talk more about ticket resellers.
Supporting your favorite programs on WXXI TV and radio is just a click away when you go public at WXXI.org. It's a convenient and secure way of supporting an important community resource. WXXI.org. Go public and pledge your support today.
And we are back on Connections. I'm Gino Finale, filling in for Evan Dawson. We are talking about ticket resellers, scalpers, whatever you want to call them, price gougers, whatever kind of words we want to use to describe people that do this, but that have become a pivotal, if not parasitic, part of the music industry. Before we went to break, Dan, you were talking about some of the...
I was talking a lot.
You were talking a lot.
Yeah,
You went through a lot
sorry.
of things there.
Preach, brother.
It's okay.
Let him sing.
You were talking a lot about some of the verified fan programs, how people can get access to tickets, and one of the ways that I think a lot of people discover bands that they love is through live music.
Yeah.
Being able to go to shows and see bands you haven't seen before. If a venue has a band coming that night, you can just go buy a ticket, go in. If we were to go that route of focusing on the first ones to buy the tickets have to be the ones that are, have a certain amount of listens on Spotify or whatever that might be, does some of that get lost so that people might not know Joywave might not be able to find them through a live show that, it has been specifically geared towards people that are already
right,
fans.
because you're saying the big fans are already in the room.
The big fans
There's
are
not
already in the
room for-
room, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, for us, we have some shows sell out. We have some that don't, right? Back to what Jimmy was saying about the lawmakers, and some of the pre-sale programs and stuff. I think that most artists do offer those things, and if you are paying attention because you are a really big fan of that artist, you are probably taking advantage of those programs. I think the people who are really feeling the StubHub stuff and the reseller stuff are the people who are going, let me see what's going on in Albany this weekend, and they look at their phone last minute and they're really paying for that. Or maybe they're a casual fan of the artist and go, that's too much. I don't want to go. And that does suck. But I think in a lot of these cases, by paying attention and taking advantage of the programs that almost all tours and artists do what I was describing with the pre-sale program. If you are a big fan, you are getting that ticket.
Yeah, I don't think you were some special case there. I've
Right.
seen many bands do that.
Yes. Yeah. So some of the frustration I feel like is people who are maybe a little bit paying less attention, and that does suck, right? But I don't know. I think a lot of this is just getting mad at secondary markets for existing.
Which they
Isn't
always
part
will.
of the issue there, though? Wouldn't you also, though, Dan, if you were, wouldn't you never want to sell out a show? Wouldn't you always want there to be about 99% capacity? Because that would mean that people who were casual fans who wanted to experience it could essentially get a ticket. And if you were consistently selling out your shows, wouldn't that be a sign that hey, maybe we should be playing bigger venues?
Right. I mean, economically, yes, you're right. I mean, that you want to sell 100% and not have any leftover demand. I know that a lot of artists like to do underplays because you for a band like us, we played at the Bug Jar in like 2015 or 2016 when we were too big to play there, but we wanted to do something that paid tribute to earlier times in the band when we would play there. We were like, it'd be really fun to go back into the Bug Jar and do a 200 cap show, and we did it as I described, of just like $10 at the door, so no tickets or anything like that. There is some kind of magic to that. I think that artists want to feel like there's been a couple cases where Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic would do like, Nirvana underplays and have a guest singer in the past few years where they would play at a dive bar in Brooklyn or something, right? Because they want to feel that cool energy. There's a lot of things in DC at the 930 Club. They just opened a small venue called the Atlantis, where it's like, the idea is that it's 1992 again, and you're seeing the bigger band on the smaller stage without production. There is something magical to that, but that is when you end up in reseller hell.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of like one of those things where it's like a necessary evil almost.
Yeah,
that the resellers exist. You will never get rid of them. But a question that comes up to me as we're talking about this is like, we're talking about the Taylor Swift Eras tour and $1,000 tickets, and like this is the biggest tour that's happened in the world, modern world history, probably world history, because I don't think anyone traveled for music any time in the past at that level. But it begs the question of like, what should be the reasonable cap and how much a live concert should sell for? I mean,
there can't be a cap.
There can't be a cap.
There cannot be a cap. Are you going to cap Super Bowl tickets? This is what I'm saying, is that like this bowl, and again, it sucks for fans. I understand that, but like the market determines what these things are worth. And Jimmy, you were saying this bill only pertains to concert tickets, right?
Yeah, that's right. One of the reasons is that with sports teams, you have the notion of season ticket holders. And to get back to your point on scarcity, think about football is one thing, that's about 8 home games per year, but think about a baseball team, right? You've got just a much broader supply of goods. So perhaps a substitute for my local Tri-City Valley Cats versus the New England Knockouts would be the Tri-City Valley Cats playing against the Binghamton Mets. I frankly wouldn't care, so that would work. So because of those dynamics, it is restricted to performance acts, though as I read the legislation, I was wondering, well, what counts as a performance act? It's not very, very strictly defined, and I think that's something that they're still going to be working on in the law.
Yeah, I mean, I would consider sports in a lot of ways a performance act.
I certainly would. Have you seen Josh Allen's performances? They're brilliant.
Yeah, they call them
Poetry.
performances. I think that's a whole other conversation to begin with.
Is it, Jimmy? Is it in the bill as reasonably defined as a performance? Is that the language?
I looked at the language, and it was just, they just said it, and I thought, oh man, that would have been a hell of a thing to try and define.
I think the one thing that we haven't talked about here is the only way you're probably going to avoid the reseller market is supporting local bands. Go see live local music,
Please.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Zach, at Anthology, how much live local music are you supporting there? I know I've seen a couple of shows there already.
Sure. Yeah, and we just reopened our doors back in March after closing Essex and moving into the Anthology. And we're activating like 1 to 2 shows a week. A lot of local stuff right now. We actually just had an event yesterday with Rochester Cocktail Revival and some awesome local musicians. I would love to see 3 to 4 shows there a week with local and regional and national talent. I think that's the move. Every day, much like a tour, every day that we're not open, we're losing money. Every day that Dan and Joywave are on tour and they're not playing a show, they're losing money. It's really important for the metrics of the thing to work, to get people in there, see some music, drink some drinks, and have a rockin' good time. So Rochester, if you're listening, please come and see live music, and also Joywave.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many talented local artists here. Klibis is one of my favorite local bands.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Cops are one of my favorite local bands. Cami Anaharo is here, and she's awesome. Like, there's so much local talent here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, any night of the week you can find something happening in the city, whether Three Heads, Bug Jar, wherever it might be. Psychic Garden has been a place I've been going to a lot. It's kind of a DIY venue. Has some great local acts there all the time. So, if you are exhausted with just having to pay double or triple prices for tickets to see one of your favorite bands, go see a band that you haven't seen yet. You might like them. That's the way I've been kind of rationalizing all of this overcomplicated music industry stuff this entire hour. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Opt out. Show up with a $10 bill at a local venue. You'll have a great time.
So with a little time we have left, why don't we talk about what you guys have going on? So Dan, I'll start with you. What's going on with Joywave?
We just got home from a tour. We were out for 5 weeks in the U.S. We were in Europe in the fall, and we did a big swing of the major markets back in the fall as well. We did the Rochester Christmas show in December. I think we're gonna do that again this year is the idea, but there's nothing to announce on that front right now.
All right, cool. And Zach, how is Anthology going? This really cool venue in a very right in the East End, very cool part of the city to have a venue like that.
100%.
Yeah, a needed space in that area, I think. So tell us how things are going there and what you guys got coming up.
Things are great, man. Obviously, prior to reopening Anthology, we opened Essex initially because of that gap in the market, right? Like there was that mid-size 1,000-ish capacity music venue in Rochester didn't exist after Anthology closed, which is it's a sweet spot for Rochester in particular, and not having that was doing us a disservice. A lot of bands, like you said, were passing over, going to Buffalo, going from major markets. They just skip right over Rochester. So, we opened Essex, and then we had the opportunity after actually the Joywave show was kind of what rang our ears a little bit, rang the bell for us to start looking at that space, because we're like, oh, that's right, Anthology, it didn't go anywhere. It was ready to put a show on, a massive production like a Joywave show, almost at a few months' notice. We're like, oh, it's still around. So, we were able to talk with Phil Fitzsimmons and get the opportunity to reopen that. So we were able to basically close Essex, close one to reopen the one that everyone's been missing, which has been awesome. And the shows are starting to pile up by the end of the year. Fourth quarter for us is it's booming. It's great. So.
Yeah, for people who haven't been to Anthology before, it's a great venue. I think it's the best one that we have had in Rochester in my adult life, and it is something you would see in a much larger city. You can put on a great show there. I'm really glad that you guys reopened the space, and very glad that it's in town. So highly recommend a concert at Anthology.
Well, thank you.
It is a great venue, and I kind of liken it to what Town Ballroom, that
Yes.
kind of size in Buffalo. And it is, to your point, a very strange thing that Rochester, a city of its size, kind of is lacking in a venue of that size. That is the level of band that we are attracting here, whether we like it or not. Taylor Swift's not coming here.
Right.
But, a lot of mid-sized bands are and would be willing to, but the Bug Jar is sometimes too small. Kodak Theater is probably too big. So this is a gap that has existed for a long time. The question of why is a whole other thing, but it's nice that you guys are open again.
Really nice, and love to see you guys there.
Yeah, for sure. Who do you got coming up soon?
Oh man, I mean, a couple that Devil Makes Three is I'm very excited about that. Silver Sun Pickups in August, which
Great band.
I
Good
love.
friends.
Yeah, dude, what a killer band.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I'm definitely going to go to that.
Yeah, so we got some really fun stuff. I mean, check out all of the listings are on our website, on Instagram. So any listener out there that wants to see what's coming up in the future, please check out those two right there.
Jimmy, can you tell the lawmakers to cap the fees at 10% and that I, Daniel Armbruster, their constituent, is very passionate about it?
Why go 10? Why not do 5?
Jimmy, that is the best idea you've had all day.
Jimmy,
Sorry,
go ahead.
It's what's going on in Albany for the next week is going to be kind of late nights at the Capitol. They're going to hash out deals on a lot of these things. Two of the people I talked to today said that they were going to be having kind of the final go no go decisions about this very issue today. Basically, this idea of fans being able to, acts being able to knock their tickets off the secondary market that one might not make it. That provision might get killed. It does sound like there's going to be restrictions on speculative ticketing, if not an outright ban. And that fee conversation is really up in the air. I think the other question, Dan, is why aren't people enforcing the rule that we have now and maybe pushing the bounds of what is reasonable? I know that, like I said, when I bought those circus tickets, when I buy tickets and look at those fees, I'm ready to sometimes grab a pitchfork and march. The problem is I just don't know exactly where I need to go.
Yeah. To Albany tonight, apparently. I'll meet you there.
Well, and it's also just an important point. Like, it is frustrating, but they wouldn't be that high if people didn't buy them.
That's right.
Sure. So when you see a $5,000 ticket and say, that's ridiculous, no one will pay for that. Yeah, they will. That's why it's $5,000.
Yep.
So that's just another complicated dynamic of it. When it comes to anything, sneakers, PlayStations,
Everything.
anything
Eggs
that's a finite,
for a minute, right?
finite commodity.
Yep.
Anything that's a finite commodity, you can.
That's the system,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, good old capitalism. That's what we have here, and that's what this show has been about. So
That's right. And real quick too, I just want to, Jimmy. Earlier, you used the word "squishy" as an adjective, and kudos for that.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
Well, thank you all for being here. Dan Armbruster from Joywave. Good to actually meet in person.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Zach Makita from Anthology.
Thanks for having
and again, Jimmy Bielkind, who also I've never actually met before,
Yeah,
but
nice to
my
meet
colleague
you,
from
Jimmy.
WNYC. Great talking to you.
Thanks. I'll come to Rochester. We'll go to a show at Anthology.
Let's
Come
do
on
it.
up.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Labella Associates, dedicated to the pursuit of partnership for more than 40 years, offering services in the development of buildings, infrastructure, environmental, and energy projects. Labella, powered by partnership. LabellaPC.com.